So let me start with Mr. Thomas. So if we're talking about global climate change and as it's driving increased demand for heating and cooling, how is Johnson Controls addressing such challenge?
Yeah, so it's a good question, right? And I think that we've heard plenty of the speakers here today also talking about how we are in a critical moment in time right now, and we need to reduce the carbon emission, and we need to increase the energy efficiency to hit the promised targets from the Paris Agreement. So in addition of that, we see the geopolitical situation around the world, and I'm from Europe, right? We see we need to make ourselves more diverse in our energy dependence, and buildings, as we heard George was talking about, play a critical role in being about 40% of the carbon emissions globally. So there's an urgency. And we heard about the vision from the kingdom in the 2030 vision, inspiring. We know that the EU is working very hard on that. We see the acts going on in North America. And we believe that we have great solutions that you're going to see out there. So what can we offer? Well, the technology is there, as we've seen, right? The payback in the financials is also there. And now that we see that the regulations are supporting us very much in this journey, as George said. So we can do retrofit, we can do new buildings, and we can hugely improve the carbon footprint of the spaces and places. And I want to talk about just briefly, because going to see a lot of inventions out there. I want to talk about the specific technology that George mentioned just briefly, which is called heat pumps. According to the IEA, about 1/5 of the increase in energy uses the last years is coming from the additional cooling and heating needed from climate changes. And typically, heating and cooling in our cities are done by gas boilers, for example, adding a significant significant carbon footprint in our cities. And our answer to that is the heat pump. Yes. Yeah? The heat pump is really been taken up by the government. For example, in the EU, the Repower plan is enabling us to deploy in the industry 50 million heat pumps by 2030. So we can talk more about that, but I wanted to mention that technology on top of what we're going to see out there.
Let's stay on the heat pumps, if your panelists don't mind. Now, definitely there got to be drivers for such technologies, and if you have any examples of customers that has those now.
Yeah, so a little bit of examples on the heat pump, and I take two in each side of each spectrum just to talk about the versatility of the product itself. So we see an increasing trend in Europe, for example, not just net zero buildings. We talk about net positive buildings. So we're talking about buildings that are basically generating electricity to the grid. So that comes from reducing the energy efficiency of the building itself by deploying the technologies that we are seeing out there that George talked about. The Open Blue, for example, is our technology to that, and heat pumps. And together with also the generation capacity of like on-site renewables for the buildings, yes, we can actually give energy back to the grid. So that's on the kind of the building level. If we then talk about what's becoming more and more apparent to that heating and cooling need I talked about earlier is district heating and district cooling. There, we deployed massive amount of heat pumps replacing boilers, and we have done that for a couple of years, but we really see that picking up right now. And one example I would like to mention is, for example, in Berlin, we have deployed, as I said, 5 massive heat pumps. We are heating and cooling about 1.3 million homes. And by doing that, we're saving 30 to 40% of the energy compared to the gas boilers that were there before.
It's brilliant. Now, if we're moving to KAUST. KAUST is King Abdulaziz University, King Abdullah's University for Science and Technology. A lot of research goes out from KAUST, and there's a lot of significant importance for those researches that happens from KAUST. But yet, when it comes to it, it's not a university, yet a city, as well as KAUST have an ecological footprint itself. So please, Professor, what are the key variables or interacting systems that affect KAUST?
Thank you for the invitation, first of all, and I will let the name slip by. But we're happy to be here as KAUST, and I did not prepare answers, but I think KAUST is dear and near to my heart. I've been at KAUST for 5 years. Faculty love to talk and brag about what they do as research and about their institution. So at KAUST, there's our president sometimes would give a talk and say, he's not the president of a university, but he's more of a mayor, right? So KAUST is a city of 7,000 people, plus minus. Everything is on campus, our school, the university, the daycare, shopping, small shopping centers, activities for places for kids, sports centers, healthcare facilities, fire station, security, etc., etc. So we are really a big sim city, if you'd like, and the president is really the mayor of that. And really, it's governed. We have to govern both. There's academic governance as well as the city governance at scale. KAUST recently has been pitching or trying to walk the walk when it comes to sustainability, the sustainability discussion. So we've recently hired a director of sustainability that directly reports to the president, and we're working directly with her right now on mapping the ecological footprint of KAUST, and we're doing that through a twin of twins approach. So we've seen some of the pitches out there on the technology of parts of the Open Blue related to digital twin developments, which is great. We are at the research front, we are sort of taking that to the next level by introducing what we pitch as the twin of twins approach, where we are pitching a fully behavioral model of KAUST, where you can actually predict what the population will do is in its interaction with the infrastructure, and we're using that to map the ecological footprint by looking at emissions from buildings and transport. So if you look at transport, we can divide that into private and university business transport fleets. So all the data for that is gathered. Shuttles around campus data is gathered. So fuel consumption, maintenance information is also gathered. The greenhouse emissions from air conditioning or HVAC systems, recycling plant capacity and operations is being gathered. We're also looking at waste accumulation throughout the campus, whether it's campus or the restaurants or residential applications. In addition to, of course, electricity consumption, on-site electricity generation from local generators, diesel consumptions from these systems as well. So we are really looking at a very comprehensive ecological footprint of KAUST. So we are in this assessment phase at the moment. Then the move is to go to a planning phase and an implementation or an operations phase with this effort. Yeah.
MashaAllah. Of course, search and development, major thing that happens in KAUST. Now, when it comes to the oil and gas sector, anything of importance and R&D happening there?
Sure. So I'd be happy to talk about that as well. So actually, I should pitch some of the major pillars of KAUST research. So KAUST really does a lot of work on energy, environment, water, and food. So these are the main 4 pillars of research that KAUST was founded to develop. And then recently we've introduced what we call a digital pillar. So we have an underlying digital pillar that is finding its way through all of the 4 major digital 4 research pillars of KAUST. So we've recently launched what we call AIX initiative. So all of these major thrusts of KAUST are everybody is finding utilization of AI to improve their research and operations, and we're doing that at KAUST. So some of the things on the oil and gas, I would say, Fran. So the question stems from the fact that I used to work for the oil and gas industry for about 7 years. So and we are at KAUST very much engaged with the oil and gas industry and Aramco. And you are all aware of Aramco's commitment to a 2050 net zero operations goal. And one of the things we're doing, for example, on that front is looking at ecological footprint of drilling operations. So all rigs of Aramco, we are now working with Aramco on assessment of ecological footprints of rigs. And then, of course, there will be assessment phase and a planning phase and operations phase. So similar to what we are doing at the KAUST level. So,
MashaAllah. And when it comes to the actual expos, or let's say the innovation days that KAUST has, there's major developments and research studies that are presented in that day that do with sustainability, do with the environment as well. Now, if I move to Mr. Francois, when it comes to HVAC, or HVAC. Now, when it comes to it, it's a big consumer of energy in the built environment. It is not a luxury nor an opinion in the GCC. What role should the industry play, and how can AHRI assist?
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank JCI, and not just to be here today, but AHRI stands for Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration Institute. It's a member-driven association, not-for-profit, and JCI is a leading member supporting all our activities to help the industry do the right thing globally. So thank you and congratulations on opening the factory and all the investments here. HVAC, well, to start, I'm not quoting anyone here, but decarbonization of the building. Today is a buzzword, and it's also the challenge on our way to 2050. It's a big challenge. They're still defining what carbon is and how to measure it in the embodied part of the building, and that's going to take some time to define and then be able to certify it. And it will really be different between countries. I mean, logistically speaking, you bring cement from point A to point B, you use the kind of construction, the climate, all of that is going to, so it's quite not complicated, it is very complicated. However, the building also has another component which is significant, which is the operational carbon. And there we have a very agreed to, well-defined measure of carbon impact, which is kilowatt hour. And nobody can debate that. And it is measurable, it's agreed to, and it could be measured by a square meter per square meter or per capita. And HVAC, we all know, in this region, HVAC, hot water, and refrigeration equipment would go from somewhere between 60 to 80% in buildings, not only new buildings upcoming, but all the existing buildings. So definitely we are guilty somewhere with the climate change, all of us, but we take our share and we're responsible about it. So there's a lot of good things we can do, both in the existing and in the new. What the industry can do is, for one thing, do what it's done successfully, both in the US and Europe, is adopt certification. Salespeople can be weak. They will just sell what they can do, how they can do it. It doesn't have to be very above the board. It can be whatever the client accepts. So certification is a mean to make sure that whatever we're selling, if we say it's efficient to that level, it is by a third party that all the industry agrees to. And unfortunately, we don't see this in the region here. I believe leading companies like JCI would be leading the way in showing certification value, because that is a common comparison point. Nobody can debate it. And HRI has developed in the recent 3 years. We were lacking on that one. We developed certification programs for high ambient, for 46, 48, also seasonal efficiency testing and rating, which will help both the existing building and the future building.
Definitely. You have a comment about that.
I would like to pick up on that because I think it's a very, very relevant point. And at least I know that in Europe, where we're also working very heavily on this, we are working closely with the European Commission to do exactly that, put the tools and the processes and the certification in place to be able to measure and make sure that we are coming through to it's called Fit for 55, which is a pledge from EU to reduce the carbon footprint of building 55% in 2030. So absolutely agree to that point.
Very major importance. Now, are there other stakeholders that can play a role when it comes to the positive role, let's say, of environment?
Definitely. I mean, the HVAC industry is one stakeholder, but we have many, many others. We start with regulators in the country that set up the law. So, with the Paris Accord, we have this, what you call I forget it now, but it's a dynamic process where every 2 years the accelerating mechanism, where whatever we see today as maps here in the region is going to increase. We know it's going to be upped. I mean, you can't go from this to this. You need to do it by steps. We are behind. We're going to a 4-degree region here unless we do things better. So the regulators, meaning you know them as SASO, ESMA, GSO in the region, will reflect whatever is the nationally determined contribution by the country. They cannot go faster than that. They have to follow that. And that's going to be changing every couple of years. So the regulators will reflect maps. What we're working with them now, we're working cooperatively with most in the region here, is to implement the compliance mechanism that makes sure that what they put on paper, actually they get. Because I've heard a lot of complaints from regulators that equipment, HVAC equipment, comes here, they test it, and it's way below. We're not talking 5%, we're talking 20, 30%, whatever the declared thing when it was approved. So certification would help, and compliance mechanism that would take that into impact. And the benefit of that is that green building standards, whether ASHRAE 90.1 or the national green buildings, they are based on ASHRAE 90.1 at the end, which refers to HRI standards, which also says certification is a mean to. Why should I sit 20 hours saying, does it meet? Show me the table, show me the calculation. It's certified, right? And everybody's certifying, and all the major companies are certifying. What was missing from our side was the regional standards, the testing. Owners should really require not low cost, but really what is right. And I'm talking institutional owners, right? Big institutional owners here. They must require not just low cost, but really operational impact as well from energy efficiency and carbon. Consultant designers, and everybody needs to cooperate.
Definitely. And it comes to sustainability, and you said cutting costs with owners. I mean, definitely cutting costs doesn't go on with sustainability, and sustainability comes with time, and that is part of the investment that should be done, as in not to invest with the execution of the project, but yet the sustainability of it.
It's cheaper. It's actually, you know, even as an owner, you don't know whether you installed the most efficient HVAC or the worst efficient HVAC. It's probably 2%. You don't even see it on your investment. And it definitely saves a lot of money and headaches over time.
Now, with that save of money, if I ask you, Mr. Thomas, now with that save of money, definitely there's an attraction that owners should look through. But what do you think from your own perspective is hindering them from going with low cost and not going with the sustainability part and the attraction of running cost?
Well, I think it's a little bit of education, and I think a couple of years ago that was a harder play. But as George said here in his introduction, I think, you know, around the pandemic, when we came back into the offices, after that we came back into the offices, there was a big drive on healthy and safety, sustainability came up. I saw during last year's COP in Glasgow, there's a big shift in actually people understanding that technology is there, payback is there, regulation is supporting. Organizations like Johnson Controls, and we have over 100,000 colleagues supporting that on the ground, and now further regulation. So I think it's a little bit of education, because as we said, we can clearly see out there that the technology exists and the payback is very attractive.
Definitely. Professor, if I ask last question, now it comes to KAUST, definitely sustainability, major thing in KAUST, and yet you talked about it and you said some examples about how sustainable the whole environment is, the SimCity that you referred to. Now, when it comes to way forward in applying what technologies and how KAUST is playing the sustainability roles in other fields and sectors, how do you think that would be possible?
Well, as I mentioned, you know, I'll recap on the 4 pillars again, and I'll give an example, perhaps, of some of the stuff KAUST is doing in the 4 pillars that we operate in. So, for example, on the water side, on the water pillar, KAUST has been developing both membrane technology and other water desalination and treatment technologies. I believe you may have seen in the social media or on LinkedIn our field trials of the wastewater treatment activities with Mudun. So we've scaled up some of the technologies on water and wastewater treatment and deployed some of these technologies at Mudun, and are very active in our engagement with Aqua Power on that front. On the environmental pillar, I would say we are doing a lot there as well. So you may have also heard of our biggest coral restoration project that is ongoing right now. So yes. KAUST is leading a major effort on coral reef restoration, as well as doing a lot of work on mangrove and mangrove growth and its capabilities to reduce or capture CO2. So these are some of the, I would say there's a lot that's happening on the environmental front. I would say we've launched our circular carbon initiative as well, that is also very, very closely interacting with Aramco, and we have a very strong oil to chemicals capability, technology, development portfolio that is being developed at CAUS. So this is a huge sort of, we have a huge environmental sort of thrust. So I covered water and environment. On the energy side, I would say we have PV materials that are record-breaking in efficiency that have been developed at CAUS, and there's a lot of discussions now with major manufacturers to deploy some of these technologies. So water, energy, environment, and food. Food, I would say, is one of the biggest strengths of CAUS. We have the Center for Desert Agriculture has been leading a lot of technology developments. We have specifically one of the areas we are very strong in is salt-tolerant plant growth, where CAUS really has a global edge and footprint today with the launch of, we have a startup that was nurtured at CAUS and developed with CAUS technology called Red Sea Farms. Red Sea Farms has raised over $50 million in global investment and is now actively engaged in projects related to both greenhouse technology, which includes a lot of cooling and heating and water and sensor management technology, as well as, of course, the actual plants that are salt tolerant. So these are a few examples of the CAUS impact that I can quickly talk to people about, but we would really invite you to attend some of our technology days and learn more about what we do at CAUS.
And definitely, CAUS is the actual proper partner for R&D when it comes to research and development. Some of the research that I've witnessed from CAUS as well to do with the speeding up of palm tree growth and produce of dates. Some of it is 3D printing utilization with coral reef and to restore coral reef and the whole environment of the research they did. Underwater communication utilizing radio frequency and laser underwater. So amazing stuff. And
I don't have to sell CAUS, right? So he's doing a great job.
I'm already there, yeah. There's content that you can check on my podcast, so yes, that's good. And definitely with that, I would like to thank you, dear all. I would like to thank Mr. Thomas Branimo, as well Professor Dr. Shihab Sayed, per the name that he here, and as well Mr. Francois Bureau. Thank you very much, gents. Thank you. Thank you. شكرا دكتور شهاب. الله يحفظك. شكرا عبد الرحمن. Thank you so much. Thank you. Oh, the group photo. Please. Should I? Oh, please.